So the Supreme Court just ruled 9-0 for Trump in a ballot disqualification dispute in Colorado. Now, there's a lot of things to talk about here, but what I want to address, instead of just stating what happened, is how there's a target audience for what's going on. I've said before, there's a target audience 1, there's a target audience 2, and there's a target audience 3. So what's going on? A lot of people are talking about this from the perspective of, well, first of all, this guy who is, an insurrectionist from January 6th, he shouldn't be able to hold office, and we should disqualify him. So people that are at a lower level of discernment, they're going to look at what people are saying, what the media is saying, all of what's happened on, and again, I was there on January 6th. There was no insurrection. The insurrection happened in November, but people are going to take that argument to then build on something else, like, oh, he can't be, he has to be barred from ruling office. Now let's first take a look at what was actually ruled, right? So this case, and again, people are just going to read headlines. They think they're going to know something and they're going to just run with it and just say, ha ha ha. And so I'm not going to sit here and argue. Look at what happened, 9-0. I can tell you in your face, right? For whoever is dissenting, they hate Trump, and tell you, look at what the Supreme Court ruled, 9-0. Haha, I can laugh at you that way. And then people are going to be saying things like, well, you have 6 conservative justices and this and that. And I can tell you, no, the other 3 ruled in favor. But what I want to do is get deeper, because a lot of people, they're, again, looking at things at face value. So what does this actually mean? This, for the first time, is talking about the 14th Amendment, Article 3, and the meaning and the reach of this, meaning that it bars former office holders who quote unquote, engaged in insurrection from holding public office again. Again, like I mentioned, what is the first rule there? You're assuming he engaged in insurrection, and so they're building on that, which, again, I'm arguing that is not the case, and a lot of us Anons, truth seekers, we've been saying the same thing. And the challenges, and again, I'll show you a map here in a second, have been filed to remove Trump from the 2024 ballot in over 30 states. So I live in Illinois, and this is the same thing is happening here in Cook County in the Chicago area. It's very disgusting in a sense. But again, the implications are far-reaching in that this could then nullify every other thing. But what people don't do is they don't really read the opinion and the depths of what's happening. So I'm just going to quote very quickly what happened. So, quote, we conclude that states may disqualify persons from holding or attempting to hold state office, but states have no power under the Constitution to enforce Section 3 with respect to federal offices, especially the presidency, end quote. And again, without just saying all 9 of these guys are all on one side, let me give some credit to the 3 liberal justices, right? They wrote, and again, you have to get into the detail so that you don't make a argument like, haha, I'm laughing at you. We're looking at the facts of what happened and also dig deeper into things that are beyond face value. So I'm going to talk about that here in a second. The 3 justices, Sotomayor, Kagan, and Brown-Jackson, wrote a concurrence which said that while they agreed Colorado should restore Trump to the 2024 ballot, they disagreed with the majority, which opinioned on, quote, which federal actors can enforce Section 3 and how they must do so, end quote. So there's a lot of room for interpretation. A lot of people are making their commentary, their color commentary, and just saying what it means for the other states and all this stuff. But they said, quote, the majority announces that a disqualification for insurrection can occur only when Congress enacts a particular kind of legislation pursuant to Section 5 of the 14th Amendment. In doing so, the majority shuts the door on other potential means of federal enforcement, or we cannot join an opinion that decides momentous and difficult issues unnecessarily, and we therefore concur only in the judgment, end quote. So this is what the trio had said. So again, there's a lot going on here with regards to state versus federal, what it means for what they actually did, and also the power of Congress. So again, I'm not going to get into that detail. A lot of the news networks are talking about that. What I want to talk about is what this means for discerning the world and also the people that are in different spectrums of awakenedness and what this means. So let's talk about this, right? So I've previously talked about audience 1, audience 2, and audience 3. So people that are not awakened yet, again, they don't have to be of lower intelligence. They don't have to be, they could be high intelligence. It doesn't matter. Audience 1 are people that have been asleep. They are sheep, and they're not awakened to the battle of Satan versus God. And again, obviously God wins, but this demonic good versus evil, all that stuff. I've talked about Awaken, where then you get into the conspiracy, a lot of stuff you experience the left versus right. You discern the news as being right-leaning, left-leaning, and all that stuff, right? So you see what's what. And then those that are enlightened, and again, I'm shortening this, but I've talked about this before. The enlightened see that you are watching a movie. You are quite literally watching scripted stuff. You're watching actors. It's a Q operation. Okay, I believe in Q. I don't believe in all the crazy other stuff. But what this psyops, the fifth dimensional warfare, and what the law of war manual and the executive orders point to, there's very obviously a continuity of government devolution based on the stolen election and other things, right? But that being one of the tipping points that brought it over the edge to where we are right now. So what's happening right now with the Supreme Court and just any other news that you want to discern? Again, I'm just taking this because it's top of mind. It's the big news of the day. But what do we see with regards to Audience One? Audience One people are now waking up to, okay, well, even if it is, these 3 liberal justices and the 6 conservative, it nullifies the argument of, well, so Trump and these guys are always going to win because you got the 6 justices on this side. So there's no way that, this happens. But this case, again, 9-0 unanimous decision nullifies this conservative advantage sort of argument. So people are waking up to this, right? So people are waking up to, okay, this is a court case, highest law of the land. They agreed. You cannot take them off, right? So again, there's another argument of what was the insurrection, what was his role, and did it really happen, all that stuff. So that will happen later, where more exposure will happen, Nancy Pelosi and all that stuff. But right now, the facts of people seeing this as injustice, they're looking at law, they're looking at interpretation, and they're saying, okay, I see, I'm waking up to the injustice that's happening against Trump. So let's talk about what's happening at the Awaken level. The Awaken level, there's deeper things you have to consider. First of all, you have to look at the actual news. You have to read the actual opinion. You have to get not only summaries, but you have to look and see what's really being said. Now, I gave a quick summary of it. It doesn't do justice, but you have to look at the depths of what's happening. And as part of this left versus right, or however you want to see it, there's more research that is required and discerning it's critical thinking, but you're discerning this big lie. So the big lie, right? So a lot of people saying different things about, what this is, but if the concept of the big lie suggests that if a lie is being told loudly and often enough, people will eventually come to believe it, right? So this is in some sense gaslighting, that whole aspect. The media, the people on the left, they do a lot of this, right? The idea is associated with propaganda techniques where repetition and emotional appeal are used to sway the public opinion or belief regardless of the truth. So it's a form of manipulation that plays on the idea of repeated exposure to a statement, increasing its perceived truthfulness, even if it's inherently false. So this is what people are waking up to in terms of what's happening with Trump versus Biden, the left versus right, and what the woke media, the liberal media are doing. This whole look at this guy. There's so many cases against him. Even though he wasn't convicted of anything, and even if he was, it's going to come back to, okay, the justice system is, and this is speaking of New York and the whole debacle that's happening with the real estate stuff in New York City, all of that. People are waking up to this and discerning this propaganda technique and interpreting the law and discerning if there are crooked people or there are righteous people, right? So this is the awakened stage. People are seeing more of that. In the enlightened stage, what are you seeing? You're seeing a whole operation. You're seeing that there is a jousting, a psychological operation, people trying to convince each other of different things. Again, this builds on the big lie here. But what's happening with the other states? There's a distraction. There's people trying to persuade people from not voting for them. There's this whole mess of, pending lawsuits, right? Illinois right here, Colorado, it's already, Maine, these are already, from their perspective, disqualified Trump. But again, with this ruling, it's overriding this, hopefully. And also with all these other things, all these other states dismissing it, being that this was a witch hunt. And so there's a dismissal, there's an appeal, but so many things are happening right now. California, New Mexico, and you got all these eastern states. There's a lot of fighting to confuse, to preoccupy, and to allow this whole good versus bad public perception thing. But more than that, the fact that if you're seeing it, you're seeing the Great Awakening happening. Each of these states are seeing the injustice. Each of these things, whether it is a concerted effort from the white hats or the black hats, some acting going on, right? You could even go as far as to say that some of these lawsuits have been brought up by white hats disguised as black hats, or they've taken a deal and the Supreme Court of that state or whoever, the appeals court, dismisses it. And it's being done as something that is not going to affect Trump in the long run. But in that moment, it was a tactic to awaken people and to then being dropped. It would have had no material impact on Trump. And if anything, it's bolstering his perception by even the left and the right. The fact that we're seeing a witch hunt, an attack happening at the highest level. And so the layered analysis means that it's theatrical. There are some states and some cases that are actually legitimate, others that may be part of this whole illusion that's happening, right? Let me move my face here. And it's a theatrical 5D chess war. And it's all part of this whole scripted movie that we are seeing in order to get people to wake up. And so this is what's happening, right? And this is how you want to see any news that's coming out. It's awakening certain people that are in audience 1 and those that are in audience 2. It's bolstering, right? And again, even in audience 2, you were operating under this facade that, oh my gosh, they're bad guys, they're against him, and it's perpetrating this whole thing and this whole, the law stuff, everything that's happening in real life from what the states are or what the news is saying, what people are writing about. But if you're in audience 3, you're looking at this as, okay, there's something else going on. It's not really this, for some people, this left versus right, good versus evil. Some people are playing evil, but they are good in order to have a greater agenda of waking people up. And so again, it's confusing. It's like, what are you talking about there? But if you follow the Q operation, if you follow that you are literally watching a scripted movie in order to wake the population up and for people to then be cornered, to have the moles, right, the double agents come out of their woodwork so that they can expose themselves. This is what's happening because it is quite literally a 5D psychological operation because we're living in the era of internet. So you can perceive perceptions, you can make things, you can get people to think the way they want. And how do you overcome this? It's not a kinetic war. And so that's why there's an operation going on. So you have to wake up to that if you are in audience 3. And so this is what I want to talk about, my commentary. But again, lots going on. It's a great time to be alive, but more is to come. It's going to get really wild as we get into, quote unquote, the elections. And again, like I've said before, we are in a state of devolution. This Biden presidency isn't a real presidency, right? This whole scripted thing, this Biden, the real Biden, supposedly being dead and having a funeral ceremony on this January 20th of 2021, this whole 4 years has been a stasis. We have been in a stasis without a real president of the Republic of the US, right? And so, however, and again, I'm not an expert in devolution. I'm not an expert in continuity of government, commander-in-chief stuff, all that stuff. But one thing is certain. It's not what it seems. Not all is what it seems. So this is what a lot of us are talking about with regards to the Great Awakening. It's very advanced. People are going to argue. They're going to argue against interpreting what's going on. They're going to argue against prophecy and a whole slew of other things because, again, people are seeing their reality differently from what others are seeing, especially the Anons, the truth seekers, and the people that are enlightened in audience 3. So love you guys. Be encouraged. Talk to you guys very soon.